The W Show is back for 2024 and it's been a big off-season, but there's one more sleep till the opening game. The winds of change have hit Whitten Oval after a tumultuous year in 2023. Can they regroup? You're watching The W Show thanks to NAB.
It's great to have your company. We have a massive show ahead of us. Welcome to The W Show thanks to NAB. We've got a bumper panel in as well, so let's get to them right now. My co-host with the mostest, maybe hostess with the mostest, Sarah Ollie, welcome back.
Welcome to you as well. We like that taco ad. 2 is better than 1,
It
so
sure
2 hosts for today.
is. I was like, where are you going with this? But I'm loving the little denim
Yes,
number.
the denim fit, thank you.
Well done. Award-winning journalist, Sarah Black, welcome to you.
Thanks, Nat.
Sporting an injury.
Sporting an injury just in time for round 1, racing the clock. But no, footy is back and I'm so excited to see some games.
Now we have a very special panellist on. It's her first time on the W Show, so we are very excited because she was an inaugural AFLW player. She's been an assistant coach, now an expert commentator, if you don't mind, Kate McCarthy, also sporting an injury.
Yes, also sporting an injury. I retired 18 months ago and just decided that I'd get something fixed up finally. So just a nice little pass on this. So if this one just stays a little bit down here, we will not hold anything against me. But I'm very excited to be here. There is a lot to get into. Round 1 coming up. I'm super excited for the AFLW season this year.
Well, let's get into how the season is going to look because really we're putting the W into AFLW. It's all about weeks and not rounds. As you can see there's 11 rounds in 10 weeks. Midweek footy, a bit of a fixture crunch there from weeks 4 to 7. Now some really short breaks we can see there for Brisbane and Hawthorn, the Eagles, Cats and Richmond. They have 5-day breaks and of course dream time to be played in the top end. That's going to be a fixture we're all looking forward to. Kate, I'll defer to you off the top. Those short breaks, the 4-day breaks, including travel to WA, how tough is that going to be on players and coaches? It's not a lot of time for respite, is there?
No, it's not. And to start with, the trip from Brisbane to Perth is one of the hardest trips. I remember we did it twice in the seasons that I was there and it's taxing, really. The day of travel takes everything out of you and then you've got to play a game of football the next day and most of the time you get back on sort of a red eye that night. So for then, I had a look at this sort of little period for the Lions. So the 13th of September, which is a Friday, they play at home. Then at Wednesday, they play at home again. And then they travel to Perth on the Saturday to play another game. So if you were a player that unfortunately suffered a concussion in that first game, say the first part of the first game, you miss that game, you then miss the Wednesday game, and then you don't travel to Perth either. So that's 3 games of football under the 12-day concussion protocol that you miss. And that's not even mentioning a soft tissue. When I was playing, basically, and it still is the case, unfortunately, if you do a soft tissue, you miss 40 to 60% of the season because 4 to 6, you can't really get away with a soft tissue any smaller amount of time out of the game than that. And love that we're getting more games in. I actually love the idea of midweek footy too.
Yeah, as
I really
a fan,
love
it's
that.
great, isn't it? What else is on TV on a Wednesday night?
It's like that Big Bash feel through summer.
Yeah.
Every night you turn it on, there's a WBBL or a BBL game. Love that. I just think there's going to be players that play significantly less football this year and some of our stars and older players that play less football thinking that they're going to play more. I don't see many experienced players playing 11 games.
I guess as well, health is wealth when it comes to the whole squad mentality as well, because you're going to have to almost play every player on your list when you're looking at how tight some of those backups are as well.
Yeah, and we had the case last year at the Western Bulldogs that we got through our entire list. We had 3 players that were actually elevated to the list for game day that were 3 train-ons, and that was in a 10-round season where you had probably 2 5-day breaks in the season. So when you're getting through, and I know other clubs have had the same situation previously, Richmond the year before, and Carlton as well. So it's going to be tight, I think, and you're going to need a whole squad mentality to get through this season.
So that's a change to the fixture. There are no rule tweaks in 2024, but there are some tech tweaks. And Sarah, I want to come to you on this because ball tracking is finally here in W. There will be a chip about the size of a 50-cent coin that weighs about 20 grams in each footy. They're going to have beacons, which are like mobile phones set up around each venue. They're going to track the ball, send the data back to the ARC. But the most important part of all of this is we've never had score review in the AFLW. So this is a game changer, isn't it, Sarah?
Definitely. So the argument around score review from the AFL in regards to AFLW competition was that the sheer number of grounds that were used, particularly the community grounds, the money that was involved in having to set up cameras on all those grounds it's better spent elsewhere when it comes to the AFLW. So this will allow for instant score reviews. The umpires will be in communication with the people running the system. It's been extensively trialled in top competitions around the country the last couple of months. The umpires can receive instant feedback and go, actually, no, that was a behind. Let's call that one back and reset. And I think the players will be pretty forgiving of that, because if it means we get the right result, then it's much better for everyone.
I mean, it essentially eliminates the howler. We've only seen a few, but we don't want to see any more, do we?
No. Well, infamously, as our colleague Gemma Bastiani loves to remind us, Sydney were robbed of their first ever win against the Bombers a few years ago. I think it was Molly Eastman had a shot for goal. It was called a behind. It was actually a goal. They lost by less than a goal.
That won't be happening again, will it?
No, it won't be indeed. Let's get to the coaching landscape though, because there are a number of new faces to look out for. Of course, on Friday night we'll see Daisy Pearce in her first foray as West Coast coach. That will be the second game of the season. Daniel Webster, he brings that IP down, of course, from Brisbane to Hawthorn, and they've been looking very exciting in the pre-season. When it comes to Collingwood, Sam Wright, the former AFL player, of course, he is in, and Tam Hyatt at the Western Bulldogs, she is coming in to replace, of course, Nathan Burke. And Kate, we will discuss Tam Hyatt and the Western Bulldogs with your lens in just a little bit, but having a look at those 4 coaches that are coming into the competition, who would you want to be?
Ooh,
very good.
great
Very
question.
Question without notice too.
I know which one I'd want to be.
I'm going to say Daniel Webster.
Yeah.
Yes.
I really like how Hawthorn have recruited in the off-season. I think some of the players, which we're actually going to get into in our deep dive as well, the players that were sort of fringe players in other clubs, namely Melbourne, they've got players across that are now going to play inside mid, and they're going to be very dynamic. And I also like the changes that he's made with their game style, as we've seen from the 2 scratch matches. They're using their weapons. They have great ball users in that team. And Beck Goddard was more of a surge mentality with her coaching, which is completely fine. It's just a different look for Hawthorn. And I think they have weapons in the way that they use their foot skills. And I think Daniel Webster's going to get the best out of them.
If you had like a passing interest in AFLW, you'd look at those 4 clubs and go, Collingwood, surely you want to be at the Pies.
Yeah.
But I think it's going to be a bit of a work in progress for Sam Wright. Very experienced in North Melbourne, highly regarded. They were quite annoyed that they lost him, but understandable, of course. But it's going to be a completely different game style we're going to see out of the Pies, and they're sort of preaching that there's going to be a little bit of patience involved to get them up and running.
Well, Sarah mentioned the Western Bulldogs and what a tumultuous season they had in 2023 on and off the field. They finished with the wooden spoon, just the 1 win for the season. They sacked their coach, Nathan Burke. And then Sarah Black, in the off-season, key players just told the club, we want out, and they moved.
So there are a couple of medical retirements off the top there. So our best wishes to Rocky Cranston and Kirsten McLeod, of course. But, you look at some of the experience, and not just the experience, but the key position players who have left the club. Kirsty Lamb, heart and soul player. Katie Lynch at one end of the field. Celine Moody at the other end of the field. Gabby Newton at both ends of the field. It's a lot of loss, obviously. And the girls that they brought in, Moore Lalawifi was going to carry a really big load in that back line. Unfortunately, she's done her ACL.
Devastating.
Ellie Gavalis and Lauren Ahrens are probably the most experienced of the lot. You've got a lot of girls on that list who are either draftees or are struggling for opportunity at the top level.
Yeah, I did some quick math and the game's in 164, obviously with draftees and players yet to debut. The game's out 384 games that they have lost in experience, and we know how valuable experience is in AFLW. So they have lost a third of their list in that 4 really senior players that you touched on, Sarah. And I think just being at the club and seeing a lot of what happened last year, and I was still there sort of through the transition period, through losing Nathan Burke, getting rid of Nathan Burke, and then the appointment process of getting Tam Hyatt on board. And I think with their list management, there was a lot of complacent around contract negotiations and offers, which actually ended up being the reason a few of those other senior players actually sort of looked elsewhere or thought, okay, maybe I will explore my other options. And I think that sort of really came to hurt the club in regards to those senior players. And I think that was the strategy going into the season, but I don't think they expected for the season to be as heavy on sort of the wins and loss columns as it ended up being.
I want to explore that with you a little bit deeper in just a moment, but Tam Hyatt, the new coach, comes in and obviously wants to put her own stamp on the team around her. So this is the staff movement as well, as you can see there. Kate, unfortunately,
You're out.
listed
I'd just like
as
to
an
say
out.
I actually stepped away. I wasn't.
Mutually
I didn't
agreed.
get fired. I'd just like to put that on the record.
Thank you for clarifying that. But just to go back to what you were saying there, I mean, you obviously were there at the club, as you say, during a really, really tough time. I want to get your insight on what it was actually like. And what was the biggest issue, do you think, for the Bulldogs at that time?
Yeah, I think without going into sort of too many of the trade secrets or the things that actually happened throughout the year at the club, it was really, really tough on Berkey in the sense that we, or the Bulldogs, didn't actually have a head of women's football. Debbie Lee was at the club probably 2 or 3 seasons ago, and since her departure as the head of women's football, they hadn't replaced her. So there was no head of women's football. So poor old Berkey was really up against it. It was really hard for him in the sense that he would be having he would play so many different roles at that club. He was not just the head coach. He was doing wellbeing roles at different times through the year. We also lost our wellbeing, our head of wellbeing. So there was no one really there in that role for the end part of the year in the toughest year of the club as well. I think the thing that they've done really well now is they have appointed a head of women's football post-review, which we were very, myself and the other coaches and also the girls that were there, were very heavy on the fact that that needed to be a position that was filled, and they filled that before the head coaching role, which was absolutely pivotal for any success that was to come of it. But I think the hardest thing was just it felt like a lack of kind of direction for where to go from there. So in the off-season, the reviews were done, which were fantastic and thorough, which was great, but at many times during the year we got told, and this is the back half of sort of the year after the season had been finished, and we were told, okay, there would be movement on the senior coach, there would be a name, we'd hear something potentially before Christmas, okay, then nothing, then potentially after Christmas, then nothing, and it just kind of, it carried on. And I understand that that's because the process needed to be thorough, but there was a little bit of a lack of communication between the people that were conducting the thorough process and senior either assistant coaches that were still there or senior players or players in general. So I think that real lack of clarity and communication is something that the club really needs to improve, and from what I hear at the club now has improved under Tam and Patrice, the new head of women's football as well. And
just to round that off, it's not just the new coach, new head of footy, new physical performance manager, new welfare manager, new list manager. So, Dan Fisher's going to have to steer this list forward now. Mick Sandry has had that job for a long time. The changes had started to be made on a list front in terms of those top draftees that they brought in at the end of last year. But this is going to be a long process for the Dogs. And the really sad thing for the club is this isn't the first time this has happened at the Western Bulldogs. They're a foundation club. They have been there since day one. They were there before day one. And they've won a flag. And this is probably the third real big turnover in their list, and staff as well. So I think that's the thing that you kind of compare these. In my opinion, there are expansion clubs that entered the competition 2 years ago that unfortunately are in a better position than the Western Bulldogs. So they've also got a new skipper. So Ellie Blackburn had been skipper of the club since 2019. Deanna Berry comes in. The vote was taken out of the players' hands this time around. Kate, right call to remove Ellie as captain? Oh, that's a loaded question.
Can I reframe that question a little bit? Because from the way the story's been reported, Kate, it appears that Ali didn't know that the captaincy wasn't going to be hers for this season. Would you have liked it if the club had given her the respect to step down ahead of the announcement that Deanna Berry would be taking over?
Yeah, I think to start with, as tough as this sounds on Ellie, it probably, if she sort of reflected on it maybe a little bit more, okay, they're doing a review of the leadership, they're doing a review of the whole program. Am I the person to lead this team forward? And I think it's so easy to say that of someone that's not Ellie, that's not the current captain of the club or that wasn't the current captain. But I think if she sort of assessed the situation, she might have seen that change was potentially coming, but I think the respect needed to be paid to her from the club's perspective to say, and this is where the communication piece comes down to it. It's, look, we've done this review. We don't think that you're the right person to lead us from this point onwards. We absolutely love everything you've done for the club. She's committed for another 5 years after a season that was the worst in the club's history. And she's taken that and put her hand up. And that would have been a tough call for her as well. She stayed loyal to the club. She essentially is that club at times, with no disrespect.
She puts them on her shoulders.
She's a Paddy Cripps in the Bulldogs
100%.
sense.
Comparison.
And I think the respect that needed to be owed to her needed to be a conversation off the record. This is where it's heading. Would you like to stand down? Would you like to address? Would you like us to release a statement to say that you are standing down? The statement didn't even reference Ellie or her previous leadership. I think that was probably a little bit of a mistake on behalf of the club, but I think she was owed the chance to stand down from that position after being a leader and essentially at times the entire club out on the field. She was owed that opportunity, I think.
Well, you mentioned round one. Let's have a look at how it is looking. We kick things off with a double header on Friday. Nat, you'll be at this one at North Sydney Oval, the Swans and the Pies.
Can't
then,
wait.
of course, Daisy's first foray, West Coast and the Tigers. A blockbuster Saturday, but I think we are reserving the best till last on Sunday because we are going to see... You'll be there probably, Nat. It's Father's Day as well. You are going there. The grand final rematch at Brighton Homes Arena. This one, the Brisbane Lions and North Melbourne. And we can see the scenes last year when it was the Lions who saluted and the devastation of North Melbourne. Kate, this is going to be a big one.
Oh, it certainly is, and I am so excited. So I did the grand final last year. I'm doing this game on Sunday for 7, and I just think you could not get the game, the season off to a better start than this, although it's a little bit triggering, I would think, for North Melbourne fans to just unfurl the flag in front of them as well. Surely that's a little bit off limits.
It's rubbing it in a little bit.
Yeah, that is. All right, let's all go out on the field and we'll unfurl the flag. But I think football-wise, this is going to be an absolute blockbuster. I think both teams know each other so well. They've had some very good clashes up until this point, the grand final just being another one of those, and sort of rewatched the highlights again the other day, and I just cannot believe how much of a roller coaster the game was. So much, I think, Jazz Garner just put them on her back again. The loss, obviously, the injury to start with, it was just a roller coaster of emotions, and then obviously capping it off with Bree Conan's goal to sort of seal the deal as the captain. So I'm really excited. I think it's hard to pick a winner, but I think the forecast on Sunday is going to play a little bit of a
You're
part
all
in
across
that.
the bomb, aren't you?
Well, you know I'm addicted to the bomb.
You
I'm
are.
constantly on the Bureau of
Refreshing.
Meteorology. It is 33. Have I got that? Yeah,
Yes,
33 degrees. Whew, I'm schwitzing up just thinking about
Absolutely.
33
Get your
degrees.
pins
How do you
out.
play
Yeah.
footy in that?
Well, I called my mum. My whole family's still up in Brisbane, and was speaking to them this week. And my mum on Monday goes, "Look, we have just skipped spring altogether. It is disgusting here already." So, and I think the low for Sunday is 18. That's kind of, we haven't even had
That's
those
been our
highs.
high, yeah.
So it's going to be a real struggle. And from going from a pre-season in Brisbane to doing pre-seasons down here, I know our pre-seasons when I was at Brisbane were in summer. But wow, it is just completely different style of football, style of weather as well with that humidity. I really think this turns the game in Brisbane's favour with how hot it's going to be up there.
Well, when it comes to North Melbourne, of course, the heartache of the loss last year, you never know how it's going to sit, whether it's going to drive a team forward or whether they'll be scarred from it. Let's take a listen to some of North Melbourne's stars.
Yeah, we are hoping to do one better. We're clearly disappointed with the result of the grand final last year, but we've done a tremendous amount of work in the off-season to get ourselves in the best possible condition that we can. We're just looking forward to taking on Brisbane, which obviously the grand final rematch, and they're a quality side, so they're going to be hard to beat.
Not a lot's changed, probably just made us as a group more hungry and just realising that, yeah, we're good enough. I know it's definitely made the girls more hungry, and we're really driven this pre-season. Yeah, Brizzy round 1, so that's exciting, like blockbuster straight up. Yeah, can't wait.
So with the annual AFLW Captains Survey, 9 of the skippers have predicted the North Melbourne Tasmania Kangaroos to be premiers in 2024. So I want to get some season predictions here from each of you. Kate, putting it all on the line here, mate. You're up first.
Yeah, well, I'm
What do you
putting it
got for
all
me?
on the line by saying Brisbane are going to win the flag. I've really gone out on a whim.
No, but it would actually be the first side to go back to back.
Yes, it would. And I think the turnover in their list, the only people that they've lost is sort of that bottom third of their list. And speaking to Craig Starcevich, the people that they've got on board just perfectly complement their play. They're fast, they're athletic. They've got a couple that are sort of hybrids of Sophie Conway and Orla O'Dwyer.
Oh,
so two of the
Just
best
what they
runners
need.
in the competition. So, and there's also this little bit up there in Brisbane. We think no one rates us. No one ever says we're going to win. So I was like, no, I'm going to buck the trend. I genuinely think they can go back to back this
And also
year.
Kate Luckins coming back on board.
Kate Luckins
What a
is
luxury.
back. How great. And apparently at 36 years of age after having a child, she's the fittest and probably in the best condition that she's ever been in going into a season. So I have very high hopes for Kate Luckins this season.
Sarah Black, your predictions, please.
I'm bucking the trend somewhat by tipping Adelaide, which is insane to think that I'm bucking the trend by tipping Adelaide.
know.
Minor premiers last year.
Minor premiers last year lost their 2 finals by a cumulative 3 points. I've said that so many times, but it's true. And they haven't, like, the only major player they've lost out of their best 21 is Montana McKinnon. So yeah, I think the Crows will do really, really well. They're just quietly plodding away over there. And I think keep your eye on Charlie Rowbottom this year.
I liked your prediction there.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. Ollie?
Meow, I'm going for the
Ooh.
Cats. Geelong to take it out. The wooden spoon I called the bottom spoon a bit earlier today, so that's how well I'm going with the Western Bulldogs there. And Jasmine Garner,
Oh
just
my gosh, umpires.
put a fluoro scrunchie in your hair or get some new boots or something, because I don't know what more you can do to get
Long
the
sleeve.
attention.
Yeah, long sleeve.
But I'm gunning for you this year,
Bleach
Jasmine.
the hair, maybe.
Yeah, good call. Nat?
My predictions, well, North. We're going there. I know. so boring. The Giants, unfortunately, with the wooden spoon after Chloe Dalton went down. Emily Bates, I just think the injection of Eliza West and a few others into that midfield might just free her up a little bit. She's obviously a friend of the W Show, so we'll give her a little bit of a shout out. So there we have it.
Hey guys, we're back. Nat, thank you.
Thank you.
Kate, thank you.
Thank you.
And Sarah, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you.
Thanks to everyone.
Thank you for joining us on the W Show. Make sure you grab those tickets and get your lips around AFLW fantasy. There's so many great prizes to be won. I believe it's a Hilux this year.
$70,000.
Don't worry, I'm going to
If
win the
you
Hilux.
don't
I've
mind.
got a team. I'll win the Hilux.
Okay,
Don't
it's
worry
all
about
yours.
joining.
We'll see you again next week on the W Show. Thanks to NAB.